In this episode of Plastic Ghosts, things are going to get pretty gross. So, stick around. Hello, fellow dorks and dorkettes, and welcome to Plastic Ghosts. My name is Rob, and this is the show where we talk about the awesome, obscure, and forgotten toys from our youth. In this episode, we are going to be talking about some of the forgotten, gross toys. Now, what do I mean by gross toys? Well, I mean simply that. Toys that were made to be gross. That was their main marketed feature, was to be gross and disgusting and just off-putting and made to make your parents feel uncomfortable. Now, gross toys have been around forever, pretty much. Now, every year there'd be a couple gross-related toys released. But it wasn't until 1985 when Am Toys, which is an offshoot of American Greetings, released Mad Balls, that the trend really grew to gross proportions. With the popularity of Mad Balls, there were a lot of companies after 1985 that really tried to cash in on this gross trend. Now, a lot of those imitators, well, they've been forgotten, so we will be discussing a couple of them, but we will also be looking at some of the toy lines that came before them. So, without further ado, let's kick this off with number one on the list, and that is Hasbro's Belly Buttons. Released in 1987, Belly Buttons had a very extensive collection. On the back of the packaging, they listed 28 individual belly buttons. Now, with my research, albeit limited, I can only find about 20 different ones. 25, really. So, I'm not sure if all 48 of them were released, or these were just 48 that they hoped to get out on the market eventually. Now, the packaging states belly buttons everywhere. And they say they can be clipped onto anything. Now, I can't find a very good picture of one of the belly buttons loose that I can see what exactly was on the back of it that would allow it to clip to anything. I mean, the back of the packaging had a kid skateboarding and they were stuck to a belt around his stomach, a la belly buttons. They had a girl with them in her hair on her backpack. I mean, they did advertise that they could be stuck anywhere, and according to this picture, they could be. But onto the belly buttons themselves. Like I said, they featured very grotesque and super deformed faces and different shticks to them. There's one that's like a little baby pig with a bonnet and a pacifier. There's one that is a pirate-esque character. There's one that looks kind of like Popeye with a corncob pipe. They kind of featured all different walks of life, professions, things like that, just in a gross, squished up, grotesque manner. Now, I don't have any recollection of these actually being on the store shelves. Now, I have not looked at eBay, of course, because I saved that for the follow-up episode. But from what photos I can find online, a lot of these seem to still be intact on their card. So I have a feeling that these did not sell well, and they were just chucked in a box, put in a back room somewhere, and have been unearthed recently to have so many pictures of them still in the package. I mean, for the most part, these are just normal people with smushed up nasty faces. They could have threw in a couple monsters or something, to liven up the line. So anyway, let's go to number two. Number two is Spitballs, made by Entertech in 1989. Now, Entertech, of course, very, very famous for their awesome water guns that you could not sell nowadays because of their realistic details. But back in the day, there was no better way to recreate your favorite action movies or action stars by running around the backyard with one of their squirt guns. But anyway, that's about Entertech. These are about Spitballs. Now, Spitballs were little rubber balls with a hole in their mouth that you could submerge into water, squeeze, and then draw up water into them. The packaging says that water could be shot 18 feet. The packaging also boasts that it's quick loading and fast shooting. What more could you want? Now, what's really cool about Spitballs were that there were the basic line of them that featured everything from skulls to pigs, soldiers, sharks, jack-o'-lanterns, which are all pretty cool. But there were also licensed Spitballs that featured Universal Monsters, Ghostbusters, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street. All in all, these little rubber balls were pretty cool looking. Now, again, I don't remember seeing them on the shelves, but I think they kind of cover the gross spectrum from their super deformed versions of sharks and soldiers and pigs. And then you add on top of that movie monsters such as Dracula, Freddy, and Jason. Anyway, on to number 3, which are Suckers, released by LJN in 1986. Now, LJN gets a bad rap for their video games, but their toy game was really strong. I mean, they've released E.T. figures, Michael Jackson figures, and the famous Dungeons & Dragons figure. So, as far as a toy company, they're aces in my book. But the Suckers toy line was something completely different. Now, let's begin by saying that Suckers were a blowgun type of toy. And if I can show you the blowgun, I think it's a dude manning a tank, but it's a little inappropriate. We'll just leave it at that. But anyway, there I think were about 16 different characters of the suction-cupped dart characters. Each one of them was different and had a name. And let me point out that the blowgun, his name was Screwy Louie. Again, maybe inappropriate, depending on how you look at things. But anyway, there were different characters like a doctor of I Am Looney, a chicken, a squid, and a dude with a hatchet that maybe is a serial killer? His name was Hatchet Harry, so your guess is as good as mine. I'm leaning for serial killer. Anyway, the back of the package stated that you could stick it to Dad's car. Shoot him at the phone, shoot him at the TV, shoot him anywhere. Now, I'm not 100% sure of how they packaged Screwy Louie or how many darts he came with, but I do know that they sold 2 packs of different character darts. Now, the reason I'm putting this on the gross spectrum is because, again, they are super deformed, goofy, grotesque caricatures of different types of people and animals. And the fact that you're using a blowgun on people and probably spraying them with your saliva. Now, number 4 on the list took more inspiration from Garbage Pail Kids than it did from Madballs, and that is Skateboard Smack-Ups. Released by Playtime in 1986, these skateboarding figures featured grotesque, yet funny, injuries. Each character had a funny name, kinda like Garbage Pail Kids, that was emblazoned on the side of their skateboard. You had one with a tree branch wrapped around her neck called Lois Lowbranch. One with a muffler hanging out of their mouth called Tammy Tailpipe. One with a stop sign wrapped around his neck called Sammy Stop Sign. The list goes on and on. There were 12 in total. Now, the packaging stated that it had real skateboard action and high-speed wheels. So I assume these weren't a pull back and let go type of mechanic. They were just wheels on a skateboard with funny, grotesque characters on board. Now, my favorite of looking at these is Ronnie Roadkill. I mean, the dude's got a raccoon on his head, albeit dead, but I have a soft spot for raccoons, so looks pretty cool to me. Now, number 5 has quickly become a favorite of mine, and I hope that we can find one for a reasonable price. I'm guessing probably not, but I'm holding out some hope. Anyway, it is Uzit, released by OI Toys in 1981. And let me point out that OI Toys stands for Uzit. So I guess that was their only claim to fame was Uzit. Sorry, I just like saying Uzit, so excuse me, let me get it out of my system. Uzit! 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 Now, Uzit is a tried and true formula for an awesome toy. He is a little green monster that's skin kinda is reminiscent of the surface of the moon. He has pocks and crevices and craters, and a really gnarly and awesome face. But I can see that there's cute in there. Believe me, I think he's pretty darn cute, and I would love him. Love him like a son. Anyway, Uzit, you put this red slime inside of him and squeeze him, and the red slime erupts from his eyes and mouth and nose. And of course, oozes all over the place. Uzit! Anyway, sorry, I'm getting distracted again by the name. But, yeah, the packaging itself says that this is simply what it does, and to play with it again, you put the ooze back in it. He also came with this really neat, and I think very groundbreaking thing of a harness that would go around his face and plug the holes. Because the package also states that if you don't put it back inside of him, it will dry out and not be fun anymore. So these plugs, harness, face mask, what have you, fill in the holes and keep the oxygen out. So I think that's really cool. I mean, recently there's toys like this out on the market, and my kids have gotten them, and they don't come with such a simple feature, and the stuff usually dries out after a few play times and it goes in the trash. It's a real bummer, but slimes today are prevalent. Yeah, I mean, slime to me, the only place I could find it way back when was in the quarter machines. Anyway, I digress on the topic of slime. Let's get back to Uzit. Again, I think he's super awesome, will look great on the shelf, and I'm, really curious to see where our plastic toy hunt gets us when we check it out on eBay. Maybe if the price is right, Uzit will be a part of my family. Anyway, those were 5 obscure, forgotten, but very awesome gross toys. Now, maybe you disagree with the term gross applied to these toys, but I couldn't think of a better way to describe them. I mean, this is only part 1. There are plenty other gross toys out there. And like I said, a lot of them came out before 1985, but a metric buttload came after 85 with the advent of Madballs and Garbage Pail Kids. They had a healthy hand in helping these gross toys prosper. But you can't forget that first time you cracked open a Garbage Pail Kid pack, and you were repulsed by what you saw, but you were drawn to it. It was awesome and funny, and like I said, just gross, but so charming at the same time. And if you had parents like mine, they were a little put off by it, but you gotta think, they came from a generation that grew up with wacky packages and things like that, so they weren't novices to the gross game like they let on. Anyway, that has been Plastic Ghosts, Gross Toys, Volume 1. So come back later on this week to see our hunt for these Plastic Ghosts gross toys on eBay. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you got something to say, please leave a comment. I love reading them and I love getting back to everybody. And if you're new around here and you enjoyed this or any of the other episodes that YouTube is recommending down here, please hit subscribe. And if you hit that little bell icon, you will be notified whenever there's a new episode. So until next time, thanks for watching. Keep being rad and stay dorky and gross.